I started my PR strategy just 3 months ago, and in that time, I've been booked on over 25 different podcasts. And in today's video, I'm breaking down exactly how I've done that, all within 30 minutes a week or less. When preparing for this video, I looked at all of the ways that I've been booked on podcasts over the last 3 months, and I found that they really fell into 3 categories: outreach, threads, and PodMatch. And I've ranked those 3 in how reliable they've been for me getting booked on shows, with outreach being the least reliable and PodMatch being the most reliable. So starting with outreach is brands or hosts pitching me to be on their podcast. They usually reach out with a cold email or a cold DM on LinkedIn, sharing a little bit about their show, their process, and why they think I would be a good fit. When you are being pitched to appear on podcasts, you need to be a little bit careful because some shows hide the fact that they charge guests to appear on their show. And I've seen people charging anywhere from $250 to over a few $1,000s for podcast appearances. Now, as a podcast host myself, I really am not aligned with shows charging guests to appear. I totally get it if maybe you're being pitched so much, this is a way to cover your production costs. But for me as a host, I'm always looking to bring on the highest quality guests that I can find, not the ones that have the deepest pocketbooks. For that reason, I do not choose to appear on shows that want to charge me to appear. Instead, I focus on shows that think that I would be a good fit for their audience. I also like to learn a little bit more about a show's audience and the topics that they like to cover to make sure it's aligned with my value and content topics. But if they meet those 2 requirements, then I generally say yes to the appearance and we go on with the booking process. Now, for me, whether I'm considering someone who's pitching me, someone on Threads, or on PodMatch, those 2 metrics are really my requirements for appearing on shows: that they do not charge for an appearance and that they have an audience who is aligned with my value and content topics. If they meet both of those metrics, then I know it's going to be a good use of my time. However, you may have different metrics, and so you just need to keep those in mind when vetting shows, whether it's through any of these 3 channels. The second way I find podcasts to guest on is on Threads. Threads is something that's been relatively new in my content strategy, and I really enjoy it. And because I engage on Threads with other people who host podcasts, once in a while the algorithm will bless me with someone who is looking for guests for their show. And generally they give a little bit of information about the show in the thread and they post the next step, whether it's to apply or to DM them. Now, the key to this when you start pitching shows is to have a really solid media kit and hopefully some social proof, meaning other hosts who have said great things about your appearances on podcasts. But if you are new to podcasting, being a guest on a podcast, you can also use other social proof like client reviews or your other social media channels with lots of followers so you can bolster your application. For a media kit, I personally use my PodMatch profile because it has everything that anyone would need to know when considering me as a guest for their show. And we'll go into this in a little more depth in a moment. But if you're not going to use PodMatch as part of your guesting strategy, you can find really affordable media kits or one-sheeters on Etsy or Creative Market, and you can personalize these usually for free using a tool like Canva. One of the most important things when you create your media sheet is having topics that you can speak to, and I also like to include questions. I have my ideas for episodes here and some questions that I'm ready and prepared to answer anytime here. And so with PodMatch, it makes it really easy because all of that's there, but you can also include that on your media kit. The other thing that I think is super powerful is including your reviews. So you can see here that I've already appeared on these podcasts and they have gone ahead and left me a review. And so when I'm sharing this publicly as my media kit, people can see that hosts really value my expertise and the value that I bring to their audience. The other thing that I like about PodMatch is that it has everything here that somebody would need to know, including my bio, my headshots, and my call to action, as well as some of the tags and a little introduction post. People really get everything that they need to know about me using this media kit. And whether you're using PodMatch or not, that really should be your goal when creating a media kit for your guesting strategy. When pitching shows, I've also found it helpful to have a media kit prepared in my Google Drive. In my media kit, I have my bio, both short and long, some headshots, as well as photos of my book in case we're talking about that at all during the episode. And the biggest reason why I like having a bio that I can share as a link with the host is because sometimes I book on shows way in advance where I won't even meet to record for 3 or 6 months. And in that time, my bio may need updating. And so I share a link to a Google Doc whenever possible instead of sharing a copy paste of my bio. If I have shows that I haven't appeared on yet and they need my bio, I can update it at any point and it'll always be updated for the hosts without a lot of back and forth or email that they need to keep track of. Now, in addition to your one-pager or the one-pager that you'll have created for you in PodMatch, sometimes you'll book shows outside of PodMatch. For me, it's on Threads. For you, it may be elsewhere. But I like to also have a media kit created in a Google Drive with a shareable link that I can share widely with hosts. And in here, I have 2 different versions of my headshot, an image of your marketing ecosystem, my book, as well as my bio. And if somebody doesn't need the full media kit, but they need my bio, then I'll go ahead and just open up my bio and share that link with the host. The third way, and in my opinion, the best way to get booked on podcasts is by using PodMatch. You can think of PodMatch as like a dating app, but it's for connecting hosts and guests instead of people who are looking for love. Now, I've been on PodMatch for almost a year now as a host, but it wasn't until just a few months ago where I joined it as a guest as well. And one of the things that I love about PodMatch is that you can find everything that you need to know about a show before you spend your time pitching them. So when I'm looking at a show, again, I make sure that they have a good fit. If they have a good fit and I go to pitch them and they charge, PodMatch will share a pop-up saying that this host has been known to charge guests and only to move forward if you're comfortable with that. And so that way it makes it really easy for you to filter out people who align with the types of shows that you're trying to appear on. The other thing that I love is once I pitch a show, everything is stored in my messages inbox, and so everything is really neat and tidy. I can see if a show passes, in which case I just archive it and move on. I can see when a show accepts, and we can go ahead and coordinate all of the booking and everything through PodMatch, and it keeps track of how many shows I've been booked on through PodMatch, when I am appearing on those shows, and also when those shows are scheduled to be aired. It takes all of the organization part of being a guest and keeps it super organized for you in one place. Let's go ahead now and take a look at PodMatch. I've already shared my one-sheeter with you. I love how PodMatch keeps everything tidy in one place. But one of the things that I love about PodMatch is how easy it makes it to discover new shows for you to guest on. And you can do that by coming to your matches. Depending on the level of your plan, you'll get more or less matches than I have now. But you can consider the matching feature almost like a dating app for connecting you with show hosts. And just like with the one-sheeter PodMatch makes for guests, they also make one for hosts. And so you can see here everything that you need to know when you're considering to pitch a show. So we can see right here the show that PodMatch has matched me with is The 7-Figure Leap with Dustin Reichman. And he focuses on entrepreneurship, business, and marketing. There's a few callouts here at the top. This member has a low acceptance rate. They respond to few recent new messages, and they typically respond within 4 weeks. So right away, we're seeing that this is not a very responsive host. And so whether or not we want to pitch this host is up to us. One of the things that I pay more attention to than the responsiveness is their ideal guest criteria. So I always scroll right down to the bottom and look and see what the type of criteria is. And they are looking to feature mission-driven entrepreneurs on their way to growing a 7-figure business by leveraging rich relationships and smart strategies. Our guests are growth-minded, transparent, and fun. And growth-minded and transparency is something that is directly in alignment with the type of education that I provide as a guest on podcasts. And so even though this host has a very low acceptance rate, I have a systematized process for pitching hosts, so it doesn't take up much of my time to go ahead and shoot my shot. Maybe he will respond. The other thing that I like to look at is if they have reviews. And so you can see they have 28 5-star reviews. Some of these metrics here are unlocked depending on your plan, so you may see something a little bit different when you log into PodMatch. but I always like to make sure that people have a good experience when they're on their show. When that happens, I'll go ahead and click the message button. This is where PodMatch will alert you if any hosts charge you to appear on the podcast. You'll see a red box right here when you go to pitch them. And I have a template that I use when pitching a host. I'll go ahead and put that in here and hit submit. But that's not the only way that you can get connected with hosts on PodMatch. You only have a certain number of matches per day as the PodMatch algorithm goes and learns and says, okay, they accepted this host, but they passed on this one, and they use that to inform the algorithm and send you back some recalculated matches. The other way you can find hosts is by going to the Explore tab. And I always like to filter out members I've already interacted with. I don't really care about the other metrics. And then you can go ahead and put other metrics in here too. So if you are like just on mindset, maybe you can go ahead and search mindset. And so you can see here all of the shows that focus on mindset or have mindset as a keyword. What I like to do is look at the keywords that are showing up here below the shows and using that as my search. So maybe instead of mindset, I'll use self-improvement to refine the types of shows that PodMatch is showing me. And so you can see here the shows that PodMatch is recommending. You can go ahead and click on that show. And just like with a match, you'll have all of the information that you need to make a decision on whether or not you're going to pitch this host or not. Once you pitch a host, everything will be kept nice and tidy for you in your messages inbox. And you can see if you are both a host and a guest, PodMatch separates those two, so you can focus on one part of your strategy at a time. If a show decides to pass, you will get a notification that they have chosen not to match at this point. And when this happens, I just archive it and move on. I'm not too worried about it. But when a host accepts you, you're able to organize everything really nice in PodMatch. You're able to schedule and organize everything right here in your inbox, and then that shows up on your PodMatch dashboard. And so you can see here, there's some dates that I need to adjust because we actually rescheduled these. And I also have upcoming releases for the Growth Pod as a host myself. And PodMatch does a great job keeping everything neat and tidy. But not only can you pitch shows, shows can pitch you. So occasionally you'll get a cold outreach on PodMatch for somebody who has found you through the guest matching and thinks you're a good fit for their show. And so in that way, not only are you able to pitch shows, but shows are able to pitch you to be a guest. Now, PodMatch alone has been responsible for over half of my guest bookings, and it continues to play a larger and larger role in my strategy. And I actually have a podcast interview with the founder of PodMatch, Alex Sanfilippo, coming out very soon. So if you don't want to miss that, be sure to click the link in the description to follow the Growth Pod on your favorite podcasting platform. And since you liked this video, you may actually be thinking about starting your own podcast. And if that's the case, you should watch this video next, where I walk you through my entire podcasting workflow and how I use templates and automations to systematize the entire process. Thank you so much for watching this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.